Hi guys, I'm Ishan Panda, second year student at IPM. I'm Indore, and as we all know, IPMAT is slowly approaching us, and that's why in today's video I will be sharing my own personal experience giving the IPMAT interview for IIM Indore, so that you guys can use some of the useful tips that I tell you and succeed in your interviews as well. So let's get right into it. So before I start sharing my own interview experience with you guys, there's some general basic pointers about the whole interview process which I would like to share it with you. This comes from not only my experience but the experience I've gathered after talking to my fellow batchmates as well about their interviews. So the number one way in which the interviews usually start is with your introduction. Right. So in this section, you usually tell them your name, your school, age, something about your family, your hobbies, interests, some of your achievements. So, like maybe your state. So this is a very general area, but that does not mean that it's not important. You should always have a thorough introduction prepared, because this can lead to you being questioned on some of the things that you mentioned in your introduction. So make sure to include those parts where you're confident to answer and you know you have great answers to give, because that's how you can use this section to your advantage. Now, except these, there are four basic types of questions which IIM Indore interviews usually have in them. It's not necessarily for them to be in the order I mentioned to you, and it's not necessary that they might include some of them anyway, but these are the most common ones seen. So number one is obviously any major current event going on. So during my interview time, it was the Olympics. So obviously me and also a lot of my batchmates will ask questions related to the Olympics in the interview. Some basic questions, right? Number second is the general knowledge area, where they might ask you questions related to the cabinet, the rivers, the mountains, like geography questions, some history questions, some architecture questions. Basically, this section consists of anything that the interviewer himself might be interested in and might want to ask you as well. Right, so this is one of the toughest sections, since no matter how much you prepare, you may not know the answer. So you have to learn how to say no, that you don't know an answer in questions of these area. This is something you should also practice very thoroughly. Now, after that, the third type of question they will ask, which is something this most common, and you will definitely get these asked in your interview, is the questions related to your stream. So unless you mention it already in your introduction, which you probably should, they will definitely ask you what was your stream in 11th and 12th. Like I was a PCM with CS student, so they will then proceed to ask questions like what is your favorite out of them, like if you say physics, which I said, they'll ask you what's your favorite topic in physics. So if I said electromagnetism, so they proceed to ask me a question on electromagnetism. So questions like, and this may not necessarily be the pattern, but this is usually how they proceed with asking questions related to the stream you took in 11th and 12th. So like I had PCMCS, so I got questions from physics, chemistry and maths in my own interview, which I will be sharing after this. So that is a third. And fourth is I'd say the most interesting part of the interview. It's where they ask you some puzzle questions. Now this to test two major things. One is your creativity, and second is your quick-wittedness and your logical thinking on the spot. So it's like, because these questions are like very tricky, right? They don't make sense normally. They're kind of meant to put you on the spot, and that's what they're basically testing, how creatively and how quickly you can adapt to the question and answer them. You don't necessarily have to give the completely correct answer, but as long as you attempt, and you attempt something logically and something that makes sense, they will usually be very impressed if you can give some good answers in these sort of areas if they ask you. So these were the general pointers which I gave you. Now followed up by this will be my own interview experience for IPM Indore. So my day of the interview, obviously very nervous. It was a time where COVID was still very widespread, so we had to give the interview from a home as well, which is I think also currently the status quo right now. So it starts with you getting a Zoom link, right? And it's a Zoom link for a waiting room, and you go and sit in that waiting room, and it's a slot of around 6 hours. So it's like even maybe like some people got shorter slots. Like I had like 3 hour slot. So in that 3 hours, you can have your interview anytime. So that's the nerve wracking part about it. So it's important to stay calm during that process. So I it started around 9 a.m. for me, and I joined, and around 9:40 I was sent to another Zoom room which said my interview will start shortly. And then the interview starts. Right, the two professors are sitting in front of me. They asked me to introduce myself. I start with telling them my name, my age, my high school in which I complete my plus one, class 10th and class 12th in. Then I proceed to tell them something about my family, then about my hobbies, my interests, some achievements I prepared in advance. So this is how I introduce myself. They then proceed onward to ask me for some of the verifications which they'll obviously tell you which of them you have to carry with yourself. So I showed them the verification, my 10th and 12th both certificates, my certificates for my achievements. So that's how it started. Until now it's going good, right? Then they asked me some questions on the Olympics which I had already thoroughly prepared on, and I was able to answer them very swiftly. Something about the medal tallies and who's ranked where's India ranked, how many medals does India have, questions which I should have known, and I did. And after that, it started a little tricky. They asked me what they really asked me because I'd already informed them what my stream was. They asked like, so you are PCM with computer science, right? And I was like, yes. And then there's like, what's your favorite out of physics, chemistry, and maths? I said physics. And they asked me, can you tell me what your favorite topic in physics is? I replied, electromagnetism, as I had already told you before. So after saying that, they gave me a question on electromagnetism, and since I'd already been preparing for JEE mains and advanced on the side, that was a question I was able to answer confidently. It was some definition-based questions about different theories. I was able to give them swiftly, and then they proceeded to ask me some questions based on probability and differentiation and general calculus on mathematics. Like they asked me to solve things on a paper and show it to them. So definitely make sure to carry a pen and paper with you. If you don't have, they'll tell you to bring it, but it's obviously makes it a little awkward. So carry it with you. I had some with me. So after that was the trickier part where they started asking me some questions about chemistry, and they were very general in sense and not something you'd ever find in a textbook. They asked me how a nasal spray works. They asked me how the mechanism is, what chemicals are used, and obviously this question I wasn't entirely confident in, but I tried to make sense of that question and answered in the way I best thought was suited. I gave them the mechanism. I told them I was not sure of the chemicals and compounds being used, but I gave some thought guesses which I had thought about for a while, and then I gave it to them, and they seemed decently impressed, right? And after that came the general knowledge area, which still gives me nightmares. So in the general knowledge round, I was asked some very challenging questions. It started very simply. I was asked name of a cave temple in the country. I said Ajanta and Ellora caves, right? And I asked which deity is being worshipped. I said the deity being worshipped, and then it moved on to some more general questions. Like name 3 of the architectural styles in Indian architecture, name the current finance minister of India. So it moved around different domains. But then I got asked, okay, you named a cave temple, now name 3 more. Now this was definitely nerve-wracking since I was already feeling lucky that I at least knew one name. So I had to like think about it, and I had to tell them that I did not know the answer. They then proceeded to ask me that, okay, do you know who these people are? Like they started listing some people, and I only knew 1 or 2 of them who were like very famous scientists, and rest I had no idea. Now after that they asked me, okay, this Telugu film, tell me when it was released. At that point, since I already did not know the answer, I realized that maybe they were just trying to see how well I handle the stress. So I tried to be as calm as possible, answer them with a smile, say I don't really follow this movie much. I will make sure to check, but since it's famous, I should know my own know the Indian culture. I'll make sure to be more informed about these questions next time. right? And they were still like very impressed with it. They were like, okay, that's a good answer. Like they didn't say it, but I could see that on their face. So that's how my interview is going. And then they certainly asked me another calculus question, and that caught me off guard, and I made some mistake in it. And they told me to redo it. I redid it, but I somehow missed another small step and made another mistake. And at that point, I knew I have to do this properly, otherwise, I might just ruin my chances. So I looked at it carefully. I said, I'm so sorry, sir. It was a genuine mistake. This was the mistake. This is the answer. I got the right answer. They seemed happy enough and they said, it was a pleasure talking to you. And do you have any questions for us? I asked them a few of the questions I did not know answers to, and also a couple of questions I prepared in advance about the institute and the whole IPM culture, so that I could show my interest and that I've done my research and I know what this course is. So they did that. They said, okay, thank you. And that's how my interview ended. And then a few months later, I got the mail that I've been selected for IPM. I'm in the program. So that was my interview experience, guys. Hope you all got to learn something and also enjoyed it. So see you next time.